Ugliest person of all time, huh? No, he's not. We'll just really mean to him for a while because he made one mistake. One. Somewhere in time for tea for two. Garfield's safe. He's off the leash. I'm just doing his thing. Everything's fine, as far as I know. It is beautiful outside.
Time is a very interesting concept, isn't it? I mean, think about it. I'm sure that every conversation that you've ever had about time always winds up becoming trippy, mind bendy, and by the end of it, you're probably questioning reality. And the thing that I find to be the most fun about time is that everyone is invited to the table: scientists, armchair philosophers, actual philosophers and academics, theologians, religion, your uncle. Everyone has a seat at the table. It has no gatekeepers. It's almost as if it's a kind of human right because it impacts us and perplexes us all equally. And when discussing the nature of time, it's very easy to feel as if you are going around and around in circles like a dog chasing its own tail. And that is no coincidence. That is because something like that is occurring. The way that time works is the way that you work. We somehow share the same nature, or at the very least, we have an interdependent relationship. We have this weird Batman and Bruce Wayne style of thing going on. It's kind of like the old joke. You know how it goes that I'm not saying Bruce Wayne is Batman, but I've
Actually,
never
find him
seen
very
them in the
handsome.
same room at the same time. Wherever we go, time must also be there, or it simply ceases to work. This is pretty much where all of our paradoxes come from. They normally arise from some kind of time error. It is something that breaks the rules of time, infinity, singularity, the grandfather paradox. I could go on and on. No time, no mind. That appears to be the rule. And over the years, I've gone deep into the metaphysics behind this in many of my previous videos, and I'll quickly flash some of them across the screen because what I want to talk about in this video is something far more important than time, something that is far more pertinent to your everyday life. What I actually want to talk about is the future, the nature of the future. And naturally, When discussing the future, you have to talk about time because time is the bridge that you cross in order to reach the future. And if you are able to stick with this video until the end, I have very important information to share with you about the future. However, I can't just blurt it out right now or it will sound crazy. It won't make any sense. We have to get some context out of the way. When I say that time is the bridge that you are crossing in order to reach the future, that isn't entirely metaphor. To better understand this, you can conceptualize time as being some kind of place that you are inside of. You could say that it is a place, a domain, some kind of realm, a plane. I mean, from the perspective of physics, this is how space time is often represented as some kind of plane. It is the medium that we exist within, similar to how water is the medium that fish exist within. And what intelligence is, at least what you and I refer to as intelligence, this phenomenon that swept this planet recently in recent history, this way that you and I view reality, this way of being that we both share. What it is some kind of strategy for navigating this medium. You could call it a biological adaptation or strategy, but I use the word biology very loosely. We can both meet in the middle and simply call it nature. I don't think that I'm enlightening anyone here when I say that we weren't always like this. This is basic elementary science. You can check the fossil record. We became like this over time. And when you consider the scale of things, we became like this very recently. And what appears obvious to me is that intelligence is nature attempting to travel through time. Intelligence is, in essence, time travel. I came to this conclusion in a previous video, and I know that it sounds very weird to phrase it that way, but this is obviously the case. Whenever you examine the mechanics of how intelligence operates, what intelligence actually is, it is some kind of prediction machine. We work by recognizing patterns and making predictions. I mean, this is the entire stated goal of the sciences to be able to make models of reality, aka patterns, and to be able to make accurate predictions. It is predictions and patterns, patterns that turn into predictions, predictions that reinforce patterns. We can see this exact same sentiment encoded in many of our ancient myths. For example, the Greek titan Prometheus is credited with gifting humanity intelligence, and the name Prometheus actually means foresight. So you can clearly see this prediction mechanism at play. And then there's the famous creation myth within Christianity, this fruit of knowledge of good and evil. And now we see within science that reality operates based on this principle of symmetry. There is this ability to detect patterns and make predictions. This is what we are. We really take for granted our ability to predict the future. It's nature's craziest trick yet. The same way that ancient aquatic life developed fins in order to better travel through water, and fish developed legs in order to travel on land. We developed intelligence in order to travel through time. And I believe that deep down we all already feel this. This is why we have this species wide fascination with time travel. We can somehow naturally intuit and understand that this is our frontier, why we have this obsession with time machines and prophecy. And what I'm doing in this video is challenging the definition of time machine. We don't want a time machine in order to see the future. We can all pretty much do that. We are all already, in essence, some kind of time machine. What we want to do is go to the future, and that's where everything begins to break down. And this is because we have a profound misunderstanding on the nature of the future. I want you to think for a moment about how you would actually define what the future is. Most people would probably say that it is something that hasn't happened yet, or perhaps the thing that's going to happen next. But I think this is a very poor way of approaching it. The future isn't the thing that happens next. The future is what always directly precedes the thing that's going to happen next. The future isn't something that hasn't happened yet, but rather, the future is what facilitates anything happening at all. By its very own nature, the future is literally beyond the scope of experience. It is beyond time. It is what lies right on the other side of infinity. Or to put it in simpler terms, the future never comes. You are always heading towards it, yet you never reach it. It never arrives. Or for you more scientific types, according to relativity, everything is moving through space time at the speed of light, and everything is moving towards the future. No one with a lab coat can state why this is. This is just an axiom.
You
This is
notice
just
how
the way that things are.
fixing my hair
Everything
changed the
is
shape of my nose
heading
slightly?
towards the future. But figuring out exactly what the future is nonsensical. For example, if you imagine that you have a line or a trajectory through space time, this line could go on forever because the future is widely considered to be infinite. But if you think about it for more than 3 seconds, if the future is considered to be infinite, then this implies that everything that could possibly happen will happen. And if it isn't infinite or it winds up terminating at some unforeseen point, then everything that could possibly happen still winds up happening. deep into the metaphysics of it all here, but the future is time's groom. As a matter of fact, when Christ talks about his return, he phrases it in the metaphor of some kind of wedding. There is an alchemical wedding that takes place at the end of time. You could say that nature is going on a hero's journey across dimensions, and we see today that the modus operandi of nature is to become more capable. We call this evolution. This is what nature is doing. It is going from no capability to limited capability, and it is trying to reach a point where anything is possible, where it is capable of anything. And I call this position of infinite possibility the imagination. The imagination shouldn't be confused with our capacity to imagine. I call it the imagination because this is the closest that we can come to understanding it. Because our imagination is where we go as human beings to become more capable. It is where our capacity to predict the future comes from. It is how we are able to see things that haven't happened yet. Our imagination is some kind of interface with the imagination, and it appears to be where nature is trying to go. If we are currently within space time, this 4D continuum, then the imagination would be some kind of 5D possibility space or probability space or something like that. As far as the rest of nature is concerned, this new dimension is pure magic. From the perspective of everything else, human beings are capable of straight up sorcery. Alan Moore, if you don't know who Alan Moore is, he is a famous writer. He's most famous for writing The Watchmen or perhaps V for Vendetta. And he himself stated that when he first ventured into the occult, he was shocked at just how much things such as fiction and the imagination actually play into it. And speaking of writing, this brings me back to my main point of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is obviously some kind of leap towards the future, a leap towards the imagination. And it is doing this by taking all of the wind out of the sails of philosophy. And when I use this word philosophy, I mean it in a literal sense, the love of knowledge. As far as I'm concerned, science is philosophy. Our ability to detect patterns, to know, to store memory, calculations, technical skills, things that we consider to be precise, is all being taken over by AI. Artificial intelligence will, in essence, have a monopoly on knowledge, or at the very least, a majority stake in it. And this results in human creativity being at an all time premium. And you don't have to be Nostradamus to see any of this. If you do even the lightest of digging, this is what all of the forecasts depict. This is what they are all saying. All of the movers and shakers, all of the leaders and titans of industry, things such as human creativity, all of these irrational assets that we possess will be your most marketable skills. As we speak, AI is capable of doing all kinds of things that we don't even know how to ask yet. One of the biggest problems in that industry is prompt writing. It's getting people to ask the right questions, to give the right instructions. Or to wrap this all in a neat little analogy, if you had a magic genie that was capable of doing just about anything that you asked it to, what would you ask it to do? You would only be limited by your own creativity and imagination. And this is why Philofantasia will be the future. And I could blab about this forever, but I want this video to be under 20 minutes, so I'm going to wrap this up. I'm not saying that artificial intelligence as we know it today is going to be the thing, the singularity. Perhaps it's some distant iteration of it, but there is an obvious direction that things are going. Nature is trying to construct some kind of magic wand that is capable of doing anything. This is what the original concept of the atom was. This is what the philosopher's stone was. I talked about both of these in earlier videos. These are just earlier echoes of this same sentiment. There are many people who think that AI is going to steal our humanity away, and that is entirely possible, but it may actually give us our humanity back. We may actually be able to be a human being again. In the future, there will be a heavier premium on things like your social skills, empathy, your ability to be a leader, creativity. Artists will be worth their weight in gold. When I say artists, I don't mean your ability to produce things on a technical level. I'm not talking about craftsmanship per se. I think that AI is obviously displacing many of these things. You will have to actually be an artist. You will have to drink your own Kool Aid, as it were. You will have to believe in the things that you are saying and doing. You will have to become your art, or your art will have to be you. It's like you will have to put your soul on display for all of the world to see and be vulnerable, and not to get rich or famous, but because it comes from some place that is deep within you, and it has to come out, it has to be expressed. This is what's on the horizon, and hopefully, with all of this in mind, you can move forward with less confusion and more clarity. Please do all of the YouTube stuff, like the video, comment, subscribe. If you have anyone who would benefit from this information, perhaps you are an artist or have other artist friends, please share the video. I'm going to carefully monitor this situation, and I will continue to report from the front lines. And until next time, y'all have a blessed day.
Need a few frames? Generative Extend from Adobe Premiere Pro can fix that. Add a few frames, generate ambient sound, and more. For a limited time, try it now with complimentary generations.
This is the story of the one. As a lineman, it's his job to keep the power on. That's why he chooses Granger for professional grade products and next day delivery, so he can rise to every challenge. Call, click, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
Giordano Bruno asks us to lift our gaze from our daily urgencies to something far taller, the heroic soul straining toward perfection, the comprehension of a world already infinitely perfect, and a union with the source from which that world pours. An intellect that is beauty itself and goodness itself, waiting to be loved back. Picture two currents running through every human heart. The first is common, vulgar, satisfied to take whatever sensation arrives and to call that living. The second is heroic, a clear stream that will not rest until it joins its headwaters in God. Bruno, following Plato and Aristotle, warns that when the lower current tries to drown the higher, disorder blooms in universities, in churches, and in the private chambers of the mind. Pedantry replaces wisdom, appetite overthrows reason, and the whole grand melody of existence collapses into noise. He warns too that life is full of contraries and paradoxes, birth and decay, pleasure and bitterness, union and separation. Each is the hinge on which its opposite turns. The unthinking are content inside this seesaw, but the heroic soul feels the torment of wanting what is absent, of fearing what is possible, of refusing to sleep inside contentment. Heroic love is pain precisely because it will not curl up inside the present moment. It wants the infinite. The finite is never enough. Yet once the mind sees that good and evil are relative flashes, that both fade like morning vapor, it can stand in the middle of change untouched. Pleasure ceases to intoxicate, pain ceases to terrify, and mutability becomes as insubstantial as a dream remembered at noon. Most souls, Bruno says, ride a wheel that lifts them high and drops them low through endless cycles of becoming. A few, the daring few, step off that wheel by fusing with eternal mind. These fortunate ones watch every apparent evil ripen into good. Suffering turns to splendor. Death in one age becomes life in all others. But inspiration comes in two varieties. One kind is blind, a house swept clean so that any passing spirit can move the furniture, perform a miracle, vanish, and leave the host no wiser. The other kind is conscious fire. It begins in a mind already luminous, already practiced in contemplation. Divine fervor fans that native spark until the person speaks and acts not as a harp strummed from outside, but as a composer of new music. The first is dignified the way an ass that carries the sacraments is dignified. The second is sacred in itself. Climbing toward excellence is like walking from night toward noon. First, we turn toward the faintest hint of dawn, then shadows, then colors from black through violet up to white, then the gleam of polished stone, then the outflowing rays, and at last the sun. That first turn feels like grace, yet Bruno says it is affinity. The sunflower bends toward the sun because light was already folded inside its seed. The human seed is love, whose emblem is fire. Love converts its object into itself, and the heroic soul will rest only when it burns with the same beauty it worships. Three kinds of love divide the world. One sees a beautiful body and climbs through that window to the beauty of spirit and the beauty of God. One stops at the window and is content to admire the reflection. A third remains in the street, gaping at the glass and craving the pleasure it promises. Only the first is truly heroic. Corresponding to those loves are two beauties. Corporeal beauty is the harmony of shape and hue, but it changes, decays, and cannot anchor permanent love. Reason, therefore, turns toward the soul that shaped the body. Intellect climbs higher still to the intelligence that shaped the soul. There it meets the captain of all forms, who steals every thought soldier for battle and lifts them past lesser goods. Even that blazing intelligence is not yet God, but only the highest idea. God remains behind a veil. We feed on images until cleaner eyes may drink the source face to face. Perfection then is a way of knowing. We become one with the thought system that originates in the mind of God. The object is bottomless, so completion is impossible. But every honest stride counts. A generous spirit will rather fall while reaching for the summit than triumph on a molehill.
Rallies and Associates.
Axion in Bruno's work hunts divine wisdom like a stag. When he finds it, the hounds of his own thoughts tear away his old nature, and he is reborn as the very quarry he pursued. The quest never ends. Whatever truth the mind seizes, it finds measured and therefore yearns beyond it. Yet the journey is not a ladder from bad to good, it is a circle, each rung containing the infinite center in miniature. Good itself is a perfective infinite, pouring itself without limit, yet always according to the vessel that receives it. Drink, and the spring spreads further. Union with that source is timeless. The moment of awakening holds the whole of eternity. Still, even the heroic soul lives on a frontier. Part of it soars toward the intelligible world, part sinks toward sense. Body is in change, and change clouds the sight of immutable truth.
Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Vinchaktitaraye. Namaskare Ture Vire Kantari Bayanashine Ture Sarvatare Tare Skakari Namostute. Namastare Ture Vire Kshanadhyutini Bhekshane Trailokyanatha Vatrabja. This is hard to do. Shatasharat-chandra Sampurna-patalanane Tara-sahasra-nikara Prahasat-kiranojhale. Namah Kankanilabjapani Padma Vibhushite Danaviryatapashati. Oh man, they're trying to teach me it, but it's hard. When he's not good enough to do it. Namastatthagatoshnesha Vijayanantacharini Ashesha Paramita Prapta Jina Putra Nishebite. Namastu Tarahumkara Purita Shadigantare Saptaloka Kramakranta Nisheshakarshana Kshame. He's trying to write dances. I'm just trying to get it up. Namah Shakranala Brahma Marudvishveshvararchite Bhutavetala Gandharva Ganayaksha Puraskrute. Yeah, we're worried about evacuate that. Yeah. Namastradi Bhatkara Parayantra Brahmadini Pratyalidha Padanyase Shikhijvala Kulojvale.
नमस्त्रीरत्नमुद्राङ्क हृदयाङ्गुली विभूषिते भूषिताशेषदिक्चक्र निकरस्वकराकुले
Karakule. She's hot.
All mutable things, therefore, are to him as things that are not. Owing to the ever-moving cycle of change, the ordinary soul must of necessity fall back, in the course of the eternal process of its life, to the lowest stage, however high in the scale it may have risen. But this, although an evil for it, does not prejudice the whole, in which all things work together for good. Some few, however, may escape this danger through becoming united with the eternal mind or source. They then cease to be subject to mutation, mind being immutable, and persist in eternal blessedness and love. For such favored ones of heaven, the greatest evils of this life are converted into goods, correspondingly great. It is suffering that compels the labor and the striving which lead most frequently to the glory of immortal splendor. Death in one age makes to live in all others. There are, however, two kinds of furore, or inspiration. In some there is only blindness, stupidity, unreasoning impulse. Others consist in a certain divine abstraction by which some men become better in fact than ordinary men. These again are of two kinds, for some becoming the habitation of gods or of divine spirits, say or do miraculous things without themselves or others understanding the reason. These for the most part are promoted to this state from one of rudeness and ignorance. The divine sense and spirit enters into them as into a house swept and garnished, they being void of any spirit or sense of their own. Others being more habituated to or skilled in contemplation, and having innate in them a lucid and intellectual spirit, are moved by an internal impulse and natural fervor with love of divinity, justice, truth, glory. By the fire of desire, fanned by the breath of purpose, they give edge to their senses, and in the sulphur of the thinking faculty enkindle the light of reason, by which they see further than ordinary men. These come in the end to speak and operate, not as vases or instruments, but as principal artificers and agents. The first have worth or dignity, the second are worthy, or the first are worthy as an ass that carries the sacraments, the second as a sacred thing. In the first we see divinity in effect. We admire, adore, obey it. In the second, we see the excellence of our own humanity. The steps towards the highest peak of human excellence are compared, after Neoplatonist example, to the degrees in intensity of light as we proceed from darkness, in which it is entirely absent, to shadow, then to the colors in their order from black to white, next to the brightness diffused from polished or transparent bodies, the rays outflowing from the sun, finally to the sun itself, in which light is most truly and most vividly itself. First of all, it is needful for the soul to turn to the light, by act of conversion to present the light of intelligence to its eyes, so to regain its lost virtue, to strengthen its sinews, to terrify and put to rout its enemies, the lower sense feelings and passions. The conversion seems to arise as by an act of grace from above. Or, to express this in other words, the soul or spirit tends towards that with which it has the greatest affinity, as the sunflower tends towards the sun. And this affinity in the human soul is love. The symbol of love is fire, for love converts the object of love into the lover, as fire is of all elements the most active, the most potent to transform others into itself. It is the divine in man that makes him or impels him to love God as he is in reality. And the goal or aim of that love is to take God into himself, to become one with God. No really divine or heroic love can ever rest satisfied in anything but spiritual beauty. For there are three kinds of love, as there are three kinds of platonic rapture: the contemplative, the practical, the idle, or voluptuous. One, from the perception of corporeal form and beauty, rises to the thought of the spiritual and divine, Another enjoys the vision of beauty for itself, and for the grace of the spirit that is reflected in the grace of the body, while still another enjoys only the material pleasure that beauty provides. The last is the love of barbarous natures, incapable of raising themselves to love that which is really worthy of love. To the two higher kinds of love correspond the two kinds of beauty, sensible and intelligible. That in the body which calls forth love, its beauty, is a certain spirituality, which consists not in definite dimensions, nor in determinate colors or forms, but in a certain harmony and consonance of members and colors. Corporeal beauty is not, however, true or permanent beauty, and therefore cannot call forth true or permanent love. The beauty of
Have you ever seen the magic glasses that can see clearly without glasses? This glasses can not only see far away, but also see near. This smart zoom glasses from Japan are really great. No need to wear lenses. The degree can be used from 100 degrees to 700 degrees. The glasses will automatically adapt to your vision, can see clearly far away and near, and are very comfortable to use. It also has the function of blocking blue light. Even if you watch TV or mobile phone for a long time, your eyes will not feel tired. If your vision is not very good or blurry, you might as well try this glasses. I believe you will love it. The lowest price on the market. Click the link to buy now.
U.S. General. Cabs, carts, and a whole lot more. Only at Harbor Freight.
the beauty of bodies is accidental, shadowy, and like other qualities is absorbed, altered, and decays through the change of the subject body, for the latter frequently from beautiful becomes ugly, without any change taking place in the soul. Reason, however, apprehends the more truly beautiful by conversion to that which makes beauty in body the source of the beauty, and that is the soul, which has so molded and formed it. Intellect rises still higher, sees that while the soul is incomparably beautiful above the beauty of bodily things, it is not beautiful in itself, or primitively. Otherwise there could not exist the diversity that is found in souls, some being wise, lovable, beautiful, others foolish, hateful, ugly. Hence it must rise to that higher intelligence which of itself is beautiful, and of itself is good. That is the one, the supreme captain, who when presented to the eyes of the thoughts militant, illuminates them, encourages, strengthens, and leads them to victory in the contempt of every other beauty, and repudiation of every other good. Its presence, therefore, is that which enables us to overcome every difficulty and conquer every force. The intelligence, which is the truest beauty attainable by us, is not yet divinity itself, but only the highest intelligible species, or form, the highest idea. Divinity itself is the final, the most perfect object of thought and love, not attainable in our present state, in which God cannot become object to us except through some image. No image of the divine, however, even the most inadequate, can be abstracted or otherwise derived by the senses from corporeal beauty or excellence. Such can be formed only by the intellect, and on such the human intellect feeds in this lower world until it be allowed to behold with purer eyes the beauty of divinity itself. In a fine simile, Bruno describes how one may come to some mansion, most exquisitely adorned. And as he goes about observing now this, now that, is pleased and happy, filled with delight and noble wonder. But if then he sees the living Lord of these beautiful forms, of beauty incomparably greater, he lets go all care or thought of them, intent wholly on this one, their source. Such is the difference between the earthly state, when we see the divine beauty in intelligible or abstract forms, derived from its effects, its works, masterpieces, its shadows and similitudes, and the perfect state, when we are allowed to behold it in its real presence. The intelligible species of this conception, which Bruno derives from Neoplatonism, are simply the ideas of the speculative sciences, which include, however, what would now be called the natural sciences. Human perfection consists in a form of knowledge, a system of thought, by which the knower becomes one with the mind in which this thought system originated, the mind of God. Our knowledge, that is our perfection, can never, however, be complete, since the object, the knowable, can never be perfectly comprehended. But it may be made complete so far as our vision extends, and herein lies a saving clause for the ordinary man. Few can reach the goal, but all may run. It is enough that each do his best possible. The generous spirit prefers to fail nobly in the pursuit of the highest, rather than to succeed in inferior and baser enterprises. Action typifies the human intellect in its pursuit of the divine wisdom and capture of divine beauty. The wild beasts whom he tracks down are the intelligible species or ideal forms, rarely sought and rarely seen by those that seek them. His dogs are the thoughts that issue outwards in search of goodness, wisdom, beauty beyond himself. The fate of Action, his death under the fangs of his own hounds, represents how the generous spirit, coming into the presence of that highest beauty, is ravished out of itself, is converted into the very prey which it pursued. Itself is now the prey of its own thoughts, for it has contracted divinity into itself, has no longer to seek it outside of itself, as love converts into the thing loved. His death means that he ends his life according to the world of folly, of sense, of blindness, and of fancy, only to commence the new intellectual life, the life of the gods. The first step, however, in the desire of the infinitely beautiful is but the beginning of an endless series. The heart goes out on an endless quest, while the intellect cannot but follow. For the intellect cannot rest in any definite or finite idea or object, but is driven ever forwards towards the source of all ideas, the ocean of all truth and goodness. Whatever form may be presented to it and comprehended by it, it judges that there must be a greater above and beyond that. Hence it is in constant discourse and movement, for whatever it possesses is seen to be a measured thing, and therefore cannot be sufficient in itself, nor good in itself, nor beautiful in itself. It is not the universe, not absolute being, but being contracted to this or that nature, species, form, represented to the intellect and presented to the mind, animo. Thus always from beauty comprehended, and therefore measured or limited, the beautiful by participation, we progress towards that which is truly beautiful, beautiful without any limit or margin. On the other hand, this infinite process is not in vain, for it is not from imperfect to perfect, but a circular movement about the degrees of perfection, in order to arrive at the infinite center, which is neither formed nor form. This paradox Tancillo, taking the part of the Nolan, refuses to explain. It probably hints at the idea as familiar in Bruno as the infinite process itself, that in each form or degree of perfection, the infinite with all its perfection is wholly present. It is a center which is at the same time the circumference. In a subsequent dialogue, the object alike of intellectual pursuit and of the heart's desire is described as a positive or perfective infinite. The will cannot rest satisfied with a finite good, but if there is other good beyond, desires it, seeks it, because, as the common saying goes, the acme of one species is the foot and the beginning of the next higher species. The highest good being infinite, it is communicated infinitely, but also according to the nature of the things to which it is communicated. Neither to the universe, for example, as regards mass and figure, nor to the intellect, nor to the heart, are any definite limits fixed. Yet the intellect and the heart may still become perfect through or by their object, for that object is not merely a privative infinite or potentiality, but a perfective or positive infinite, as being itself actuality and perfection. When the intellect conceives truth or light, the good, the beautiful, within the whole capacity of its nature, and the soul drinks of the divine nectar and of the source of eternal life, so much as its vessel can hold, it is seen that the light of truth extends beyond, and that the intellect may go on, penetrating more deeply into it. The nectar and the source of living water are infinitely productive. The soul may quench its thirst in it again and again. Thus the blessed or perfect life for Bruno meant a permanent, continuous absorption of the individual soul in the divine goodness, a permanence or eternity, which was also one with the instant of time. There was no greater value at any later moment than at the first union of the soul with its divine object. The soul was thereby removed, once for all, out of the constant flux of things, the incessant renewal and rebirth of the soul throughout the ages, and lifted up into the calm of the eternal and immutable. Even the heroic soul, however, is, as other souls, on the borderline between corporeal and incorporeal nature. In part, it tends to rise towards the upper world, in part inclines towards the lower world. If sense ascends to imagination, imagination to reason, reason to intellect, intellect to mind, then the soul is wholly converted into God, and its dwelling place is the intelligible world. In the contrary direction, it descends through conversion to the sensible world, by way of intellect, reason, imagination, sense, and the vegetative faculty. Mind, the highest faculty in Bruno's psychology, the intuitive perception of unity with the supreme ideal world, is oppressed by its conjunction with the more material faculties of the soul. Knowing of a higher state to which the soul might rise, it despises the present in favor of the future. If a brute had sense of the difference between its condition and that of man, and between the baseness of its state and the nobility of that of man, to which it did not feel it impossible to rise, it would prefer death which should put it on the way to that state, to life which held it fast in its present one. So the soul, compelled by its loftier thoughts, as if dead to the body, aspires upwards. Although living in the body, it vegetates there as dead. It is present in it so far as animation is concerned, but absent from it in its proper action. Thus the heroic soul, although present in the body, is absent from it with the better part of itself, and unites itself in an indissoluble bond with divine things. It feels neither love nor hatred of mortal things, considering itself too great to be the slave and servant of its body. The latter it regards simply as a prison house within which its liberty is closed in, a snare that holds its wings entangled, a chain that binds its hands, fetters that hold its feet fast, a veil that bewilders its vision. Yet it is neither slave nor captive nor entangled, nor chained nor held fast, bound nor blind, for the body cannot tyrannize over it further than itself allows. It has spirit allotted to it proportionally to its nearness to divinity, since the corporeal world and matter are subject to divinity and nature. So it may make itself strong against fortune, magnanimous against injustice, bold in face of poverty, disease, and persecution. The soul of man, in Bruno's psychology as in Aristotle's, performs a double function. The one is to vivify and actuate the body, and the other to contemplate the higher world. It has a receptive faculty towards the spiritual, an active faculty towards the corporeal. Body is as dead, a thing privative towards the soul, which is its life and perfection, and the soul is as dead, a thing privative to the higher illuminating intelligence from which its intellect derives both its tendency or nature and its actual form, its realization. The soul is not locally in the body, but is related to it as intrinsic form and as extrinsic members, and giving shape to the composite result from within and from without. Body is in soul, soul in mind, and mind either is or is in God, as Plotinus said. The dualism of nature and divinity, of corporeal and spiritual, intellect and sense, permeates the ethical as it permeates the earlier philosophical thought of Bruno. Nowhere is the Neoplatonist effort to overcome the dualism inherent both in Plato and in Aristotle less effective than here. Thus, the body remains, in spite of the continuity seemingly maintained between the highest and the lowest of the emanations from the supreme, or the identity asserted between sense, imagination, reason, intellect, the chief hindrance to the aspiration of the soul, for the body is in continual movement, change, alteration, and its faculties are conditioned by its inherent nature, its operations by its faculties. How then can immobility, subsistence, entity, truth be understood by that which is always different from itself, always acting and becoming in different ways? What truth, what representation can be depicted or impressed